So coming to next question, it's generally seen that many spiritual seekers in the beginning, when they get the spiritual happiness or the spiritual bliss, they kind of start avoiding the material pursuits or material activities which are actually necessary even to maintain the spiritual life. So in that situation, what should a spiritual seeker or a beginner do?
Yeah, it's a very common problem. People, are apprehensive of taking up spiritual life or spiritual activities, because they think that if we get too much into that, then our studies, our job, career, family, relationships may get affected. I may not be able to achieve my goals. Nowadays, it's a very competitive world, right? You need to be at the top to really succeed, or even to get a job nowadays, right? You need to really be at the top. I need to work extra hard, you know. So therefore, we already have so many distractions. So why have another distraction in the form of spirituality, right? Let me first achieve my goals. Let me just get my degree, and let me get my job, or let me get my whatever, or let me make this much money and get this much success, or get this relationship in place, and then maybe I will practice spirituality. That's what people tend to think. But the first thing to understand is that human life is very short. We do not know how long we're going to live here, right? So, what if we die today or tomorrow? We'll be missing the chance, right? According to the scriptures, it is very rare to have a human birth, and once you lose it without practicing spirituality, there is a high risk that you may end up, in an animal birth in your next life, right? So, so we don't have, we don't know how much time we have, right? We don't know how much time we have left in this life. So therefore, the most important purpose of life, we have many goals in life. We may have various goals in life, but what is the goal of life? That is why God has given us this life, why we have got this human life. Ultimately, it is for self-realization, according to the scriptures, according to the Gita. The purpose of human life is not to just earn money and have a good job or a good relationship and so on and so forth, but actually realize yourself, which only the human being can do, right? So that has to be prioritized, but at the same time, without neglecting your other duties, without neglecting your career, without neglecting your whatever duties you have, whether it is studies or relationships or earning money or taking care of the family, whatever it may be. Do not neglect that. So that is the conclusion that Lord Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, where he says that according to my opinion, Krishna says that you should work, do your duties, at the same time also remember God. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. That means at all times you remember me, but also fight. Do your duties. So he is not saying do one or the other. That is our dichotomy. Like we are caught up in this duality, thinking that either I practice spirituality nicely or I do my duties nicely. But whereas Gita's teaching is not like that. It says you do both nicely. You do both nicely. In fact, both are supposed to be complementary to each other. Your spirituality is supposed to make you more efficient and more responsible in your work, and your work is supposed to make you remember God, right? So these two are not opposed to each other. And if you choose one over the other, you will eventually end up giving up this thing and going to the other extreme. Sometimes you become too materialistic. We see people become frustrated and say, okay, sab chhod ke bhag jao. And they go to the other extreme. Or they become so-called too spiritual and leave their, neglect their material, so-called material duties, and then they go to the other extreme, saying that अभी बहुत भक्ति कर ली, आप छोड़ दो, अब आप पूरा भक्ति छोड़ के पूरी तरह से, like they are absorbed in their material activities. So the pendulum shifts from one end to the other. So we kind of shift from extreme materialism to extreme spiritualism, but that is our mind actually in action, our materialistic conditioned mind. But whereas our scriptures teach us, don't go to either extreme. In fact, balance both, do both in a very responsible and balanced manner. Then you'll have wholesome growth and you become a perfect human being.